name is Seth Stein. I'm the Executive Director of the Alliance of Long Island Agencies, an association of OPWDD providers of services in Nassau and Suffolk County. Today's press conference is part of the Be Fair to Direct Care Coalition 300 Days to Better Pay campaign. The campaign is a partnership of the Alliance and 6 other associations representing providers of services to people with developmental disabilities and their families. Press conferences were heard earlier in Albany and Utica and will be held in Manhattan and Rochester. The press conferences are being held to bring to the attention of Governor Cuomo and the legislature the general need to increase wages of direct support professionals, or DSPs, and other low-wage workers who provide services and support, such as school aides, cooks, maintenance workers, and drivers in programs for children and adults with developmental disabilities, in order to stem the overwhelming tide of vacancy and turnover. I'm pleased to report that both houses of the legislature passed the Harvey and Ellen Wiesenberg bill, which directs the Commissioner of OPWDD to identify the causes of the high turnover and vacancy rate of DSPs working in not-for-profit agencies, and identify the necessary resources to maintain a high-quality workforce serving people with developmental disabilities. Direct service professionals, including aides, cooks, and others, need a wage they can live on. Starting salaries range between $9.62 and $10.78. These jobs are complex, challenging, and they deserve a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. Our field faces an average vacancy rate of 9.33%, an increase of 1/3 in 1 year. A turnover rate of 23% has also increased by 1/3 last year. This is a crisis, and if it's not addressed, it will result in jeopardy to the health and safety of individuals with developmental disabilities. Agencies are now coping with the problem of this vacancy and turnover rate using overtime. And we had statewide over 6 million hours of overtime. That clearly demonstrates that we have a crisis in this industry. We've only had one rate increase since 2008, with therefore an average increase of about 0.5% per year in over that period of 8 years. Yet 90% of our funding comes from the government, and 80% of that funding goes directly to pay the wages of direct service professionals. We have to tell the governor and the legislature that we need additional funding to provide wage increases to direct service professionals.
Didn't the legislature just adjourn about a week ago? So why are we talking about next year? And it's a great question to ask, because the budget in this state is so much dictated by the administration, by the governor. We have a strong executive budget, so that not only do I head the Health Committee in the Senate, I head the subcommittee that deals with all Medicaid and health. And of course, funding for the developmentally disabled comes through the Medicaid budget. So what we want to see as the governor is starting to prepare the budget, and that all begins in August of this year for a presentation to the legislature in January of next year. But as they make that preparation, that they put in adequate funds for the workers that we're talking about today, people who have not had an increase since 2008, and that the rest of the whole arena of healthcare that's out there in terms of the services, in terms of the health for the developmentally disabled, in terms of the maintenance, all of that is sufficient so that we could get to the point where we have the services delivered in the way we want. So I'm glad you're here today. I'm glad the Alliance is working this around the state, and I hope you'll continue to raise this issue as we do go through what we have is every 2 years a legislative campaign.
And this is why I'm speaking to you today. We have people that are elected to office that are doing what we call, or I call, public service. And that priority starts with people that need it the most. And those are our people and our families. So we're reaching out. And what I'm saying, because I want you to know, we have 135,000 families in the state of New York, part of our programs. That's more than 500,000 people. if we can be together, as we were when we voted to restore that $90 million, we'd have 500,000 people's voices being heard by those people who are making the decision. So it's your obligation and responsibility to work with your agencies and work together, because we have to have a voice. And it's interesting, many years ago, people said to me, "You're the voice of those who have no voice." Well, it's not my voice I have to hear, it's yours. And everybody that we know has to be able to be part of what we're doing now to be successful in next year's budget, to have the cooperation. I'm not worrying about the legislature, I'm worrying about what the governor and his staff would be doing or thinking. Let's do our job. Let's be loyal to your families. Let's be the voice of those who have no voice. And thank you for being here.
The Duesenberg bill that was passed and will be going to the governor shortly requires the OPWDD to file a report by November 1st on the issue, particularly as Senator Hannan said, to give an opportunity to have input in that budget process. So we didn't want to wait for that report till next year. We wanted it by November 1 so that it could inform the budget process.
Thank you, and good morning. I'm Terry Manzione, and most importantly, I'm Stewie's mom. Stewie is a handsome young man with severe autism. He has a contagious smile that lights up his bright blue eyes, and although he's mostly nonverbal, he creates nicknames for the direct support professionals who work with him, like Pocahontas John Smith and Littlefoot. Stewie lives in a home and works in a day habilitation program operated by a nonprofit provider agency, where he relies on the support of his DSPs throughout each moment of his day. Stewie's DSPs assist him with food preparation, laundry, bathing, dressing, shaving, and clipping his nails, none of which he can do independently, although he's nearly 22 years old. His DSPs administer the several medications Stewie takes because he doesn't understand why he takes those medications, and he doesn't understand how or when they should be taken. Each day, his DSPs teach Stewie farming skills such as egg collection, animal care, building beehives, building birdhouses, ensuring he's safe and that his day is one that's full of meaningful activity. His DSPs perform all of these tasks while following scores of rules, regulations, and compliance guidelines that dictate how they provide these supports and how they must document them in lengthy, written, daily recordings. I'd like to take a step back for a moment and talk about a speech that I gave about 4 years ago at a legislative breakfast. Senate Majority Leader John Flanagan was seated 8 feet from the podium, and I could clearly see the tears streaming down his face as I spoke. During the speech, I shared a story about my neighbor Sal, who had no children of his own and no relationship or connection to the world of the developmentally disabled. But yet, just before his death, he spoke 5 honest words to me that nobody before or after him has been brave enough to say to me. Teresa, your death won't be easy. Teresa, your death won't be easy. Senator Flanagan's tears confirmed the truth of Sal's prediction. I understand the fiscal constraints that tie the hands of the men and the women who are the servants and the employees of our state's government. But I also know that Article 17, Section 1 of our New York State Constitution mandates the aid, care, and support of the needy are public concerns and shall be provided by the state. This provision of the New York State Constitution was specifically adopted to protect rights vulnerable in times of difficult economic circumstances. My son, 130,000 people like him currently in the care of the OPWD system, and many more thousands of young adults who will soon transition from state education services to OPWDD services are the needy to which our state constitution speaks. Stewie often engages in tantrums, thrashing about in his body of 6 foot 1 inch and 210 pounds. He screams so loud that he can be heard far across the fields where he works. For little more than they would make flipping burgers at McDonald's, Stewie's DSPs protect him from himself when he can't protect himself from himself. And sometimes they cry discreetly, like Senator Flanagan did, when Stewie finds his place of calm and says, "I'm sorry." Without continued enhancement of the salaries paid to DSPs, they will be forced to leave their jobs. And the vacancy rate that Seth referenced before, which recently grew at a dangerous rate of 21% vacancy increase in just 1 year, that rate will accelerate, rendering the state unable to fulfill its constitutional obligation of supporting the needs of those with developmental disabilities. I bought a sign here today that I made back in 2013. My sign begs, "Governor, don't tear down the house your father built." In his initial 2016-2017 executive budget, the governor failed to provide any funding to support agencies in meeting the soon-to-be minimum wage mandate for DSPs.